Don't neglect any particular muscle group for, you know, whatever kind of reason you can come up with in your head. And I see that a lot. There's a lot of let me see, what stage of denial, or no, what stage of grief is that? First is denial. Oh yeah, shit, what is it? It's denial, anger, bartering. I don't remember. But, you know, a lot of guys end up kind of bargaining in their mind, like, oh, well, I don't know. I already did quads. It's a pretty good lift. You know, I don't think I really need to hit hamstrings. I'd be overdoing it now. Let's just leave it. That's enough for today. Boom. Not cool, right? Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's like just pretty freaking blatant. Nah, I don't want to do calves. Boom. Not cool. Not freaking cool. Oh, you know, I see the cardio equipment all the time. Haha, skip cardio. Not good. Not something I want to see. You know what I'm saying? And Frank, I gotta stop saying frankly to start all these sentences. And yeah, if I'm being real with you, it's not that hard. You know, honestly, the cardio is not the craziest thing in the world. And now, coming up on summertime, even if you're not still, you know, going back and forth with a regular school schedule, and usually summer just ends up being a little more chill anyway, right? It's kind of just the nature of things, especially if you're somebody working in, I forget, what is it? A lot of sales. Usually summertime is a little more lax, right? Everybody's out doing stuff, you know, you're not just sitting around. So you, I can almost guarantee the pressure is going to come off a touch in the summer, at least with anything that you don't really want to do, right? Plus, I mean, just kind of the invigoration effect of having a good ass season around. It might be different if you're somewhere like Florida where it could be like too warm and too hot, and then it's almost sucking away your energy. But, you know, that's the time to get after it, you know. So if you got any summer goals this year, I think the cardio should be one of them. And seated bike, I'm just going to walk, count your steps. I'm more of a, you know, 30 minutes of low intensity, steady state kind of guy. I've never really been a fan of the like the walking kind of approach, but you know, it's as long as you're moving around like that, because you don't, you basically want to balance two things dieting wise. Like these two are the ones that are actually going to decide whether or not you're on track towards what you're working for, or if you're just sitting around hobbling in the same spot, right? Your energy expenditure, how much energy you're burning every day. So if you're a more active guy, you're going to burn more energy, right? Your actual metabolism is going to be more efficient. I mean, just adding an extra whatever minutes of cardiovascular activity per week. I mean, I can't pull them off the top of my head, but I'm pretty dang certain studies will show, I couldn't even tell you what multitude of benefits that schedule and kind of routine will give, you know, basically just people on average, right? So it's better off being in a state of activity, right? At least on, you know, portions of the day. I'm not saying you have to run around all the time, but, you know, cardio session, weight session, honestly, I think that'll do it, right? That's where it's at. So as long as that's in place, then you can kind of get into either, you know, eating more than that, so you start gaining weight, gaining size, because you've got excess calories to work with, or less than, and keeping yourself in a deficit to the point where you're actually, you know, burning body fat in your internal storage, you know. So one or the other. Or if you're the kind of guy where you're good, you're at your sort of end state size, that's what you want to roll with, you're like, dude, 190 lean, that's where it's at, right? Then, you know, just stay there, you know, not a problem. There's certainly nothing wrong with reaching your final form and wanting to stay there. And honestly, that's kind of the end goal for everybody, right? You want to get to a point where it's like, nice. You're no longer in pursuit of something, even though the pursuit is the fun part. You kind of will probably, you know, end up opening up to new endeavors. Because if you weren't aware, staying the same size and maintaining your size is much easier than building it up in the first place. As goes with, or the same goes for regaining size later on. If you were a nut football player, whatever, in college, and then you kind of backed off, you know, get out of the gym, you know, you're not really in the same shape you were in before, and then you get after it again, compared to someone who didn't go through that whole process in the beginning, you have a friggin' advantage. Because the idea of muscle memory is more true than you might think, and it's not just like some kind of thing. You know, there's a lot of ways to kind of describe it, but as far as I'm kind of, you know, come to learn, you basically gotta, like, what's gonna make up for your muscle size right? It's two things. It's the amount of just actual physical fibers you've got built up, as well as how large those fibers are at any given moment, right? So when I talk about fullness or flatness, eating a ton of carbs or being depleted in a diet, that's what's going to constitute whether or not they're extra full of water and sarcoplasm and glycogen and all sorts of fancy pants, muscular whatever that fills them up, or if they're a bit more kind of shrunk down, not so full, flat as it were, right? So that's going to kind of constitute back and forths, any quick gains or losses. Like if you start dieting down today, you might be 6 pounds lighter in a week. That's not 6 pounds of fat. That's just 6 pounds of water and carbs that you're no longer holding on to, So that's one side of things. So that's where you can fluctuate pretty dramatically, and it's nothing to freak out about. After the expo, when I dropped from like 265 almost to 260, I'm not freaking, right? That's just temporary. I don't think water weight is an accurate description, because usually people just think of water weight as like making you feel bloated or look like whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking intramuscular water, right? Now, when it comes to the actual number of muscle fibers, you've got actual, it's like myonuclei, whatever. The more you work out, the more of those you start to develop. And even though you may shrink down and you might kind of, atrophy or lose muscle, as it were, your muscle tissue from someone who's beefed up and then shrunk back down is still different fundamentally than someone who's never worked out in the first place. So you've got an edge. All right, if you know somebody who's starting working out and maybe you've been out of it for a while, but you still know what you're doing, if you get into it, you're going to be a freaking beast again, dude, you got the advantage. It's almost newbie gains again. You're playing the same game after already learning all the cheat codes later on, so that's one thing to look forward to in the future. So maybe, if I, fast forward 10 years, I say, you know what, I got to chill. I'm going, whatever, say some kind of other random thing that I want to get into. And then later on after that, after kind of shrinking down and getting more normal or something, I say, let's bring the beef back. Come on, let's get back into it. Right. You kind of have it once you get it. It's to an extent almost just a learned experience or skill that even if you kind of shrink back from, will always be there. Not only mentally, but like just straight up physically. So that's just one more bonus I think about it, because then that's just more gains that you're making, because it's not only such that you're making gains, temporarily. Obviously it's all temporary, but you're not in just a position where you're like, if you start to get off track, you're totally screwed forever. You're almost saving your progress as you go forward, and you're making it easier to come back. And that's, if you've ever had if you ever get into some kind of crazy injury or whatever, knock on wood, of course, then just keep that in mind. Once you get back and moving, even though it might feel more difficult in the moment because you got to build that momentum back, you're going to be used to it, right? It's like how those cars are, like, they limit your max speed for the first 500 miles an hour. So if you buy a fancy ass car and you're not used to it, you don't just instantly crash on like day one. Like, you kind of get used to it for a while. It's almost like that. You lift long enough, and then in a sense, you get just that extra sort of special treatment. Might be losing my exact train of thought there, but I think we get the gist.